diesel is dead, right? Well, actually no. Not according to Mazda, which has just launched the CX-60 family SUV complete with a brand new diesel engine. I don't just mean an updated version of an existing engine either. This is a newly developed 3.3 litre inline 6-cylinder diesel that Mazda has created here. And it is, well, once you're past the swathes of plastic anyway, quite an impressive thing. Now, Mazda describes this as being the right solution at the right time for high mileage drivers, private buyers in general, and also those who tow. And from that perspective, I can absolutely see where they're coming from. And not only that, but there is some really impressive figures to go with this. So don't forget, it's towing a big car, this. So the CX-60 is sort of a rival for cars like the Toyota RAV4 in terms of pricing. So, you know, prices start from £43,000 for the diesel. But it's actually closer in size to cars like the Hyundai Santa Fe and Kia Sorento. So it's a big car, and yet Mazda have managed to get 56.5 mpg and 129 grams per kilometre out of this inline diesel engine. Even in the 251 brake horsepower all-wheel drive version of this diesel car, those figures only nudge up to 137 grams per kilometre and 54.3 mpg by official WLTP standards, which is really pretty good. A BMW X3 xDrive 30D, for instance, is more powerful but is also an inline 6-cylinder diesel, and that manages 45 mpg and 164 grams per kilometre. A big part of Mazda's secret is the 48-volt mild hybrid system that its new eSky Active D engine has, which never drives the car on electric power alone, but does use a small lithium-ion battery and electric motor to help boost efficiency. So normally at this point I would show you in more depth the practicality and the interior of the CX-60, but we have already done a video on the plug-in hybrid version of this car, which Ivan drove at the launch a few months ago, so do check out the full review of that on the Car Gurus UK YouTube channel. In the meantime, here's the boot. It's really big, but there is no 7-seat option in the CX-60. It's got rear seats too, hurrah, and plenty of legroom. Could have a bit more headroom though. The dash in the Mazda is logical, it feels really nicely made, and you get almost all of the equipment you want, even in the entry-level exclusive line trim that we have here. The infotainment is controlled by a rotary dial, it's not a touchscreen, and it's got proper shortcut buttons, which is refreshingly sensible. Refreshingly sensible is, I think, probably the way most people will think about this car if they're considering a diesel SUV. Yes, Mazda's certainly been pretty unconventional by developing from scratch a brand new inline 6-cylinder diesel, but it's all to do with the company's right sizing policy. So Mazda has always been very engineering led, and I like that about them. Most people like that about them. I think it's one of the sort of quirky aspects that really appeals, given that most manufacturers these days are by necessity led by legislation. It's new fuel injection, so effectively the fuel and air mixture is injected into two separate sort of parts of the cylinder. It's very clever, and it means that you get a lean burn. The thermal efficiency of the engine's really good as well. And they maintain that by making it that larger capacity, you're thereby stressing the engine less and actually getting probably an equivalent MPG to what you might do from a higher stressed 4-cylinder, or, as I would say, probably even a better economy. And it does. I think it does feel less stressed than your sort of typical 2-litre turbocharged 4-cylinder that you find in most of the CX-60's rivals. It does get noisy when you accelerate hard, it's a diesel, but actually it makes quite a nice sort of burble. Rear-wheel drive this one, even the 4-wheel drive cars actually, they're still rear bias. So again, with Mazda, they like to make cars that drive well, and so you have pretty decent body control. You do have a sport mode down here that you can put it into. That affects the 8-speed dual clutch transmission, automatic transmission, and it affects your steering and all of that kind of stuff. I would say that it's one of the more fun, big family SUVs to drive. I think Mazda have definitely kind of got that in the bag. The downside, predictably, is that the ride comfort is not what I think it should be for a car like this. This test car is on 20-inch wheels. Now, you can get it on smaller wheels if you go for the exclusive line trim. Do that, because I think that would probably help the ride. On these roads it's not too bad, but certainly around town, really scruffy roads, really big potholes, this kind of thing, I found the ride, to be honest, actually quite hard to bear. Now, I know when Ivan drove the plug-in hybrid, he said the same thing, the ride was pretty firm. I think it depends on wheel size, I think it depends on where you drive it most of the time. Real-world MPG in the CX-60 diesel is pretty good too. We've seen nearly 40 mpg over a very varied driving route, including a lot of rural roads. If you do mostly easy motorway miles, it's feasible that you'll get close to 50 mpg. As for towing, any of the Mazda CX-60 models can pull a 2.5-tonne braked trailer, including the rear-drive diesel and the plug-in hybrid. I do think Mazda are brave, verging on perhaps misguided, to have bothered developing a brand new diesel engine like this, because I just don't know what the demand will be. It's just got such a PR image issue, diesel, which is such a shame, because I'm an EV advocate. I recommend EVs regularly, and I love EVs. I do most of my miles in EVs, but I absolutely understand why plenty of people would prefer a big diesel like this right now, and I would totally support somebody buying one of these. But there are other rivals that you can get, whether, a hybrid or diesel, and they're cheaper. They kind of do a similar job, especially as you can't get this with the 7 seats. So I do think that it's kind of objectively difficult to figure out why you would buy the diesel CX-60. I think the plug-in hybrid makes a more convincing case for itself, particularly because actually when I looked at the finances on the plug-in hybrid CX-60 versus the diesel, there's not that much in it, you'd be surprised. Both are fairly expensive. You're looking at over £600 per month. Even if you go for this entry-level diesel that we've got here, you can get the more powerful all-wheel drive diesel, not too much more, so that would be the better bet, I guess, if you tow. We have also, on that note, been driving around in some fairly, as you can see, fairly grubby conditions, slightly muddy rural roads. This rear-wheel drive car hasn't been too much of a problem, but sometimes if you're just going for a bit of a kind of energetic exit from a junction, you get a bit of wheel spin, so it feels a little bit scrappy sometimes. Quite a lot of people who want these cars like the peace of mind of four-wheel drive, so that's there if you want it. There's no doubting the efficiency for a big diesel engine like this is really great. My only other quibble with the way the car drives, we go back to that, so the 48-volt mild hybrid system that I've mentioned. Small battery, small electric motor. What happens is you can see on the dials up here, when you're charging the electric motor and all of that stuff, that's fine. And what the car does is it will actually turn the diesel engine off and you will coast. It's called I-stop. And you will see that the needle drops down to 0, the engine's off, and you're just coasting on electric power, and then it kicks back in again. Now, most of the time that's fine, but I've caught it out a couple of times where it goes into the I-stop mode and you see the diesel engine sort of switch itself off, and when you go back on the throttle, if you get back on the throttle quickly, there's a real pause, there's a real hesitation that you don't always expect, so that can be a bit unpredictable. I think in general it's just really nice to drive, but I would have liked slightly better refinement, both in terms of tyre noise and in terms of engine noise, and I would have liked better ride comfort. If it had nailed that, and if it were a bit cheaper, I think this would be highly recommendable. As it is, well, I think probably the plug-in hybrid or some of the other sort of cheaper diesel alternatives to the Mazda, probably objectively your better bet at the moment. Head to cargurus.co.uk for a whole host of fantastic used cars, and don't forget to like the video, subscribe to the Car Gurus UK YouTube channel, and ring that bell, turn on your notifications so that you don't miss any of our videos.